Hey, a very good Tuesday evening to you. John here. We're checking in because we've got another one of these winter weather makers on the way. This one coming through for your day tomorrow. Yes, there's another system on the way for Saturday too, but the primary focus of this live update with you here on your Tuesday evening is going to be for that system tomorrow, your Wednesday. Looking at our WNEP channel right now, over on the screen behind me, looks like we've already got a scroll going for some of these delays and closings that are in place for tomorrow for a lot of the schools. Probably a good call there, as we've got some snow that'll be impactful for especially the morning commute. And it'll continue through the day, the snow anyway, but looks like the primary impacts would be earlier in the day. You know, we're into March now, so that higher sun angle in the sky does a lot of good melting. No real big changes here from what you may have seen from Kurt earlier in the day or my 7 o'clock broadcast, but these live updates, a couple of things. You know, obviously we get you the latest and most updated information that we can, and we're not confined to the tough time constraints that being on TV gives us. So a little bit more behind the scenes of how the sausage is made, as well as the stuff that you've come to expect, your totals, your timing, and of course your impacts too. Because folks like to jump in and out of these lives, I'll come back to the totals a couple of times during this. Let's do that first though. I want to start you there. Again, no big changes to what you may have seen earlier in the day. This is still going to be a general slushy coating or so for a lot of our valleys. And again, that's because temperatures, when the snow is falling, is going to be a little bit above freezing for a lot of this. So it's going to have a tough time sticking to the road. Sure, your car roofs, your colder surfaces, your sidewalks, your grass, your shrubs, you know, those will see a little bit more snow. But if it's not sticking to the roads, really not going to be a big deal for travel. Now, in the higher elevations, in places like Shunk and Lopez, up through the Endless Mountains, up through the northern tier, into places like, let's say, Tobyhanna and Gouldsboro, Thornhurst, even down through Hazleton and Bear Creek and into the back mountain, up through Red Rock. Higher elevation there, of course, so the snow not just sticking to the grass, but also sticking to the roads. And, of course, with the elevation, you're going to find a little bit more snow. So for our higher elevation locales, we're talking about anywhere from 2 to as much as 5 inches of snow. Meanwhile, through a lot of our valleys, again, just a lot of those slushy coatings to an inch or thereabouts. I want to show you something that you usually don't get to see on TV. We're talking about the water vapor satellite imagery, and what we can see from this is our developing storm system. You can almost make out kind of this S shape right in here. We call that in meteorology a baroclinic leaf, and what that means as a meteorologist is we've got a strengthening storm system. And right now, if we kind of had a pinpoint where the center of low pressure is, this little surface wave, likely somewhere over eastern Tennessee, and this thing is kind of moving in a northeast kind of a fashion. So the center itself will pass well to our south, which leaves us on the colder side. So unlike a lot of storms that we've seen this year, there's not going to be that wintry mix. This is primarily going to be a snowmaker. Yes, snowing, even if it doesn't accumulate, there may be a little mix with rain, but finally, a storm that's not going to feature a whole bunch of that wintry mixed bag like so many of the storms like we've had this year have featured. Winter weather advisories are in effect for a good chunk of our area. Sorry, we're jumping around on the maps, but there you go. It's in effect tomorrow morning, right through the afternoon for all of the highlighted counties shaded here in purple. Now, just because you don't have an advisory doesn't mean that you won't find any snow. It just means that the areas that are highlighted are likely to find some of the higher end totals. Now again, this is going to be primarily an elevation dependent storm. So as you go up in elevation, you'll find more snow accumulating. Meanwhile, down in our valleys, not so much. Here's where the system is now. You can see it's all rain so far as it's just starting to enter places like Virginia and Kentucky. All rain for them, too warm down there to support any kind of snow, but as it moves up into our neck of the woods, temperatures are cold enough and it will fall primarily as snow. Here's a look at things on future clouds and radar. So, hey, maybe you're working third shift, right? You got to get out tonight, 11 o'clock, midnight, whatever the case may be. No problems. We're not expecting this to start until we get closer to sunrise tomorrow morning, especially across our southern tier of counties, down through the coal region, down through places like Snyder County, into the Selinsgroves, the Middleburgs. You'll find some of that snow flying as early as about 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can see that here as we advance future clouds and radar. Now, I know this particular map is showing the blues all the way up to the northern tier by 7 o'clock in the morning, but that may not quite be reaching the ground just yet. I think it will be reaching the ground in places like Tower City and Pine Grove, down through even Mahanoy City, maybe finding a little bit of snow in your neck of the woods by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and into Port Trevorton, even into places like Northumberland, Sunbury, Numidia, Elysburg, probably snowing by about 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Middleburg, probably from snow for you. Beavertown and Beaver Springs, Mount Pleasant, likely some snow just kind of getting going there by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. More of us getting into the snow by, let's call it, 8, 9 o'clock tomorrow. Now, you can see some of the mixing shade there into the Wyoming Valley as we pause things here for you at 11 o'clock. So right in here, Wyoming, Lackawanna valleys. So that's likely going to be a pure rain-snow mix and not really that sleet, because, you know, temperatures, when you're talking about those mixed precipitation types, usually cold near the ground and warmer over the top of us, above freezing, maybe say 38 degrees or so. Meanwhile, at the ground, it's like 30 or 29. That's just not going to be the case. Temperatures at the ground tomorrow are going to be more like, again, in the valleys, 34, 35. So that's not going to leave room for sleet. This is primarily going to be a pure rain-snow mix in the valleys. Meanwhile, higher elevations, cold enough still to support all snow. That's going to continue into the afternoon. Again, notice that you're finding in the valleys that mixing of pure rain and snow, higher elevations still falling as all snow right through the afternoon. Would say, though, that once we get beyond noon tomorrow, again, that March sun angle higher in the sky, it'll be harder for the snow to accumulate afternoon, even in the higher elevations. Yes, it'll still be snowing. Yes, perhaps still accumulating a bit on the grass, especially if that snow is still falling at a reasonable clip. But the roads improving once we get beyond noon tomorrow, even in the higher elevations. Things will be winding down by dinner time, so by the evening commute, even if there are some flakes, really not as much of a concern as what we might be finding in the morning. I like showing this map for the timing and intensity of the different precipitation types. I would say this, you know, based on some of the latest data that's just coming in, there may be a period here where there will be kind of almost a heavy burst of snow. So plan on this tomorrow. All right, flakes are going to fly at your house, or some form of precipitation, for about 12 hours, okay? But for about a 3-hour window tomorrow, especially let's call it mid-morning through about noon, that would be the timing of perhaps a little burst of some heavy snow. So maybe that's 10 o'clock in the morning until about 1 in the afternoon, let's say, in the viewing area. Something to keep in mind. So it might not just be steady, it may in fact be heavy for a little period there, and that's going to be when a lot of your snow accumulates on the roads and on the grass. After that, again, once you get beyond noon, it's getting harder to accumulate, especially because the intensity of the snow is likely coming down a little bit. In terms of impacts, so really not a lot of impact for the morning drive itself as we're just getting underway, but it won't take long for things to ramp up. Only putting our impacts, the highest impacts between 8 a.m. and noon as medium, because look, where a lot of our population centers are throughout a lot of the Lackawanna, Wyoming, and Susquehanna valleys, not much impact there, okay, because temperature's just a little bit too warm on the roads to make them anything more than just wet. Yes, higher elevations absolutely become a little bit snow covered for a while. And I do want to point this out, if it snows hard enough, early enough tomorrow, even in our valleys, there could be a brief window of time where even, yes, the valley roads get at least a little bit slushy. Although I still think, even as the newest data comes in, the mountain roads are most likely to be the highest impacted out of this. Once we get beyond noon tomorrow, it's starting to get a little bit too warm. So even our mountain roads should start to thaw out a little bit. Valley roads will just be wet. So the evening commute, especially on our major state roads and interstates, looking just wet. So things should be vastly improved later in the day. This map, I don't know that I didn't get to it on TV, and I usually don't show it just because it's maybe a little wonky, maybe a little bit too much to take in and not a lot of time. But it's an attempt from the Weather Prediction Service to kind of level the playing field a little bit and show you where, you know, it's trying to bring in a lot of factors. It's trying to bring in the intensity of the snow, the timing of the snow, where that is all happening. Because look, you get up into the mountains, you expect more snow at any time throughout the, let's call it late fall through early spring, and those folks may be a little bit more apt to be able to handle it. Meanwhile, in our valleys, more people, the getting around could be a little bit tougher in the snow, a little harder to keep up with perhaps. So in our valleys, right, you might expect that, things can kind of ramp up a little bit more. So if the timing of the snow and the amount of snow is expected to be, somewhat higher in the valleys, you'd see a higher end on the Storm Severity Index. What you're looking at is what's called the WSSI, or the Winter Storm Severity Index. So in that kind of yellow shading, a minor end event, so a level 2 out of 5, but everywhere else limited. And now, look, even in the areas where we're forecasting 2 to 5 inches of snow, still for the most part in that limited impact, because, look, those are the folks, Poconos, Endless Mountains for the most part here, more apt to be able to deal with it. So yes, more snow, but overall limited impacts, level 1 out of 5. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday evening to do just that. Look, this is our snowfall accumulation map, a general 2 to 5 inches of snow outside of the Wyoming, Lackawanna, and Susquehanna valleys. So those higher end totals, those closer to 4 or 5 inch amounts, are going to be in the higher elevations, places like Red Rock, places like Lopez and Shunk, places like Hot Bottom, Montrose, okay? Even in East Rush, shout out Mike Ararat up there, probably going to find some of the higher end amounts. Vandaling, Forest City, Uniondale, Clifford Township, you're going to be on the higher end of things with the snow. Up to the Music Mountains, including Music Mountain and Archbald. Waymart going to find some of the higher end snow out of this. Sterling into Thornhurst, into Gouldsboro, Tobyhanna, higher end snow. That right down to Mount Pocono and all of the Pocono Plateau. Let's take you down through Weatherly, Albrightsville, Beaver Meadows, Tresco, Hazelton, McAdoo. Higher end snowfall totals probably closer to, let's say, that 4 and 5 inch amount than the lower end. Meanwhile, our valley cities, so Taylor, Old Forge, Scranton, down through Pittston, West Pittston, Sawyersville, Luzerne, Larksville, Nanticoke even, probably on the lower end of things, closer to that inch and less impacts on the roads, more so just kind of some heavy wet snow. Do want to point that out too. This is going to be a heavy, pasty, wet snow. It's that kind that is tough to move around. So for those of us in the valleys, thankful, probably not doing a lot of shoveling tomorrow. Meanwhile, higher elevations where you are shoveling, heads up. This stuff is going to be heavy. It's going to be wet. It's going to be tough to move around. So might want to try to do it in stages to try to get rid of that stuff. To kind of tie things up in a ball here, wrap things up, light snow is going to begin tomorrow between about 6 and 8 in the morning. There will probably be a period of time in our valleys where we find that snow mixes with some rain, and there will be some slushy roads. The most likely spots to be impacted by the snow will be in the higher elevations, meaning the roadways. Roads in the valleys, there's a lower end chance, the brief period of time when the snow is most intense, between about 9 a.m. and noon, where even our valley roads may be getting a little bit slushy, but certainly the mountain roads are more likely to be impacted. It's likely going to snow at your house for about 12 hours tomorrow, but there's only going to be a brief window of time where those impacts are higher. So yes, still snowing in the evening commute, but really not much, if anything, sticking to the roads. So I'm not really expecting much in the way of impacts from that. Again, that system tomorrow wrapping up between about 5 and 8 in the evening. So I do thank you a ton for checking this out, this live broadcast on YouTube, on our social media pages, and of course on our website, WNEP.com, and our app. We really appreciate you being here for this. We do have some new data that's coming in. So yeah, you just saw this, but I would still invite you to come back for our 10 and 11 o'clock broadcast, 10 WNEP2 and 11 over on WNEP, not just because I love your viewership, because of course I really do, but we are still getting some new data in. So I will be updating things as necessary as this new data rolls in. Now, before we go, do want to quickly touch on this. That would be Saturday system. Look, I always say one storm at a time. So let's get through tonight before we get into a lot of detail as to what's to come for the weekend. But I would say this, Scranton, St. Patrick's Day Parade going on Saturday. If you have plans to attend right now, I would continue to check back on this forecast, because if things end up more snowy and less rainy, I mean, I even want to say this, at this point, it's at the very least a mix of rain and snow for this thing, and it's going to be windy too. So, assuming this thing is still going to be going on, I mean, plan on it being pretty miserable out there. Also this, just a little safety note here. I know, it's a time you go out, you have some alcoholic beverages and you have a good time, right? In the event that this thing turns more snowy and windy, I mean, just use a lot of common sense and a lot of care with that in mind. You know, call ahead and have rides sorted out for yourself. I want you to have a good time. I just want you to be safe. We're going to continue to update that as we go through the week. We're still several days away, and there's still plenty of wiggle room. This thing could be more wet or more white, or just nothing at all if it kicks far enough east. So still a lot to sort out with that. But in the meantime, we've got a system coming in for tomorrow, your Wednesday, that will have some impact, especially on some of those mountain roads. A general slushy coating to an inch or so in our valleys, but higher amounts, up to 5 inches possible across some of the mountaintops. So take care tomorrow morning, be safe, and be sure to check back with us here on WNEP 10 and 11 o'clock tonight. And of course, Joe will be updating things, giving you a blow-by-blow as it happens throughout the morning tomorrow. WNEP Newswatch 16 this morning starts at 4:30 in the morning, and Joe will be taking you through things, and our crews live in the field will be taking you through things every step of the way. Take care, have a great Tuesday night. We'll see you soon.